There once was a sad little lump of clay named Clayona. Her bleak life was nothing more than a sequence of sulky, wretched, miserable days. She was weary with her life on the earth, and she desperately longed to find a greater purpose than merely being trampled upon.
Whoa. Ow! Ow!
Then, one magnificent day, the mighty hands of the sovereign potter reached down and invited her to his potter's wheel, where he had an amazing and brilliant design to sculpt her into a beautiful, honorable vessel. Eagerly, Clayona scrambled up onto the master potter's wheel, and beaming with anticipation, she relaxed, putting her complete trust in his skilled and gracious hands. Contentedly, she kept her eyes on the potter as he conformed her life, as she intentionally tried to cooperate with each move he was attempting to make. Clayona had never known such joy as the sovereign potter wielded away her darkness and fashioned her with delightful purpose. The process was long, however, much longer than Clayona had expected, and soon she became impatient with the meticulous details of the potter. Her eyes began to wander as she soon became from the gaze of her sculptor, as she wondered if the potter actually was a master at all, and if perhaps he was mistaken in taking so much time to make her into a useful, beautiful vessel. As her eyes wandered, Clayona began to notice alluring, shimmering, fun things that were taking place off of the potter's wheel. And it wasn't long before she slipped away from the potter's hands and became intrigued with the enthralling world around her. But before long, Clayona began to itch, and as her outer sides started to dry out and become hard, and she realized how far she had drifted from the sovereign hands that had once brought her such joy. Repenting, she edged herself back onto the waiting potter's wheel, where he had once applied soothing water that softened her into moldable clay again. Humbly, she kept her eyes on the potter as he conformed her life, and she intentionally tried to cooperate with each move he was attempting. Eventually, the potter was satisfied with his masterpiece, and he moved Clayona into a new and exciting place. Ever so carefully, he placed her on a shelf, smiled with his most comforting eyes, and closed the door. Clayona waited. She waited, and she waited, and she wondered, and she began to itch. Not just itch, but dry out. She was hot, angry, and desperate as the heat in the little room became unbearable. Clayona couldn't help but wonder why the potter would leave her in such a miserable, hot, dry place. As the heat intensified, Clayona felt as though she would crack and shatter to pieces. Did he not love her? Had he forgotten all about her? Was he, after all, unable to sculpt her into a beautiful, honorable vessel? As the dark, consuming doubts smothered her, Clayona lurched for the door, begging for the all-powerful potter to free her from her intense circumstances. Why? Why? Why was he just standing there on the outside of the door, so near, but not opening it? Cleona's agonizing stare met his loving gaze, and she felt calmed. Then, For the remainder of the waiting time, she peacefully kept her eyes on the potter as he conformed her life, and she, once again, intentionally tried to cooperate with each move he was attempting to make. Finally, the potter opened the door to the very hot room, and he brought her out. What happiness, what sweetness, what a relief. Clayona was ecstatic to be out of her furnace of affliction. Cautiously, she wondered what would happen next. Clayona waited. She waited and she waited. And as she waited, she cooled. And as she cooled, she felt stronger than ever before. Beaming with anticipation, she relaxed, putting her complete trust in his skilled and gracious hands. She knew he had an amazing and brilliant design to sculpt her into a beautiful and honorable vessel. Curiously, she kept her eyes on the potter as he conformed her life, and she intentionally tried to cooperate with each move he was attempting to make. At long last, on one exceptionally magnificent day, the sovereign invited Clayona to grace his table, for she had finally become the beautiful, honorable vessel the master potter had in his mind for her to be all along. Gracefully, she danced up onto the table, and looking into his delighted eyes, she apologized for the very many instances in which she wasted time doubting his sovereign plan for her. To which he graciously replied, "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, and you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior, because you are precious in my eyes and honored, and I love you." Gloriously, she knelt before the potter, because he had conformed her life, and she intentionally tried to cooperate with each move he had made.